The transition to direct law during gear extension is one of the most critical moments in non-normal flight operations. It is the point where system logic, aerodynamics, and manual handling converge. Understanding this shift is the difference between a stabilized approach and a dangerous loss of control. In the hierarchy of flight control laws, we typically see a cascading failure driven by computer logic. However, the move from alternate to direct law is unique because it is intentional. It isn't triggered by a new sensor failure. It is triggered by a manual cockpit input that signifies your commitment to the landing. The logic here is absolute. If the flight control system is already operating in alternate law, the specific action of extending the landing gear commands an instantaneous degradation to direct law. You are essentially telling the computers that you are ready to hand fly this aircraft to the pavement. When this shift occurs, the aircraft's DNA changes. In alternate law, the computers are still interpreting your desires via G-load and pitch rate demand. In direct law, those computers stop interpreting and begin passing along strict mechanical inputs. Protections are lost, auto trim is gone, and you are left with a direct relationship between your hand and the control surfaces. Your safety margin changes visually on the tape. In alternate law, you have reduced envelope protections. But in direct law, those are zeroed out. Your only guard against an aerodynamic stall is the velocity stall warning. You must respect the barber pole implicitly, as the aircraft will no longer intervene to save you. We are returning to raw aerodynamics. Because the control surface deflection is now directly proportional to your stick input, you lose all automated flight path stability. Every movement of the side stick results in a direct movement of the metal without any electronic dampening or correction. This is the most critical manual workload shift. The aircraft will no longer hold its trimmed state through airspeed or thrust changes. If you fail to trim manually, the aerodynamic loads will result in an impossibly heavy side stick. You must be prepared to move that wheel immediately. It seems counterintuitive to force a pilot into a lower control law during the most stressful phase of flight. Why did Airbus intentionally program the gear drop to trigger direct law? The answer isn't in a computer failure, it's found in the engineering philosophy of the landing flare. Consider the hazard. If you remained in alternate law, the auto trim would still be active. As you pull back to flare, the computer would sense the sustained stick pressure and automatically roll the nose-up trim to help you. Without direct law, you would be fighting a runaway-style trim all the way to the runway, risking a severe tail strike or a complete loss of control. The landing gear acts as a commitment signal. By dropping the gear, you are telling the aircraft to lock out the auto trim. Direct law is forced so that your stick forces safely and directly correlate to elevator deflection, giving you the natural feel required for a safe touchdown. This is the simulator trap. We see crews manage the initial emergency perfectly until the gear comes down. At 1,000 feet, the loss of auto trim instantly spikes the workload and shatters the stability of the approach. If you aren't ready for it, the aircraft will get away from you in seconds. The primary error is failing to anticipate the trim loss. In direct law, any configuration change or thrust adjustment will aggressively pitch the aircraft. These untrimmed forces snowball rapidly, leading to a destabilized approach dangerously close to the ground. To mitigate this, you must be physically ahead of the system logic. Anticipate the "use man pitch trim" message before it appears. Place your hand on the trim wheel prior to calling for gear down and be ready to rapidly and continuously trim away those stick pressures. Remember the golden rules. First, fly raw aerodynamics. You are no longer flying a protected computer. Second, know your status. Transition your mindset before the transition happens. Let the ECAM guide you, but never let it distract you from the primary task of flying the plane. In summary, gear extension in alternate law forces direct law. You lose all protections and auto trim, but you gain the direct control necessary to flare without fighting the computer. Anticipate the shift, use manual pitch trim aggressively, and stay ahead of the aircraft. For more tutorials, visit us on Patreon, the link in the description below and in the first pinned comment of the video. Until next time, fly safe.